You know, we've been talking all about sustainability all day. We've heard an awful lot of really excellent presentations. So starting with you, Jim, maybe what struck you most listening to everything we've heard today?
Well, first of all, Anya, I represent a producer group, which is 4,300 milk suppliers in Ireland, which is approximately 30% of the milk pool. Therefore, I'm probably in the same category as some of the areas that the great companies that have spoken this morning are developing primary producers and primary product. We're very, very clear in Glanbia that this is an evolution and a philosophy. It's not a project that's going to finish, and it's certainly not a fad. If we were to take a parallel in Irish history, I would go back to the 70s when Ireland at that time grew by 75% in milk production within 10 years. And co-ops like Glanbia would have, or Avonmore as it was at the time, would have hired teams of graduates, dairy science graduates, and indeed would have developed the quality standards while they grew phenomenally at that time. We're at this same watershed again in terms of quota removal in 2015. And today we are fully committed to the same type of evolution. So we believe that we can develop, and we're at the start of it, develop a sustainable milk pool which is consistent with achieving this evolution that we're here now and the growth that the economy so badly needs. So the points then that jumped out to me today probably some are quite specific, but the first one was really in terms of JC Gonzalez Menzies. If we needed a message in relation to an iconic brand like the McDonald's brand, and JC said that the development of the brand, one of the greatest brands on earth, is linked to the sustainability evolution. So if there's any, I suppose, doubting Thomas in the audience from our country who thinks that this is not an evolution, a philosophy, and that it will go away, I think JC should be listened to and they should reflect on that. The second topic that came up again by JC was certification, and indeed it was referred to later by Dan Benna. And the debate about certification within sustainability has gone on now for a number of years. There's a fear of various new certifications, and I think somebody suggested that there's money involved and the standards of certification. But from an Irish perspective, first of all, we require certification to prove and legitimise what we're doing. And that's where the National Quality Assurance Scheme that the Minister has launched and developed comes into play, because within that we have independent auditing of our farms. And that is massive. Now, what Dan actually said on top of that was that not alone do we require certification, we also require continuous improvement. And continuous improvement is about putting in resources to develop the team.
So it's not just box ticking?
No, it's not. And if it is, we shouldn't do it, to be quite honest. It's just short term. So the second speaker then that interested me greatly was Inder Poonaji from Nestle, and Inder said something last night which caused me to reflect considerably. He said that ultimately this is about risk management. And when I was listening to many great deliveries this morning, I'm reflecting, why is it that an organisation of I suppose, as clinical, maybe as tough as Nestle or Mars, or indeed McDonald's, who are massively successful organisations, why is it that they are planting 220 million coffee trees?
It's not just PR.
No, it's not just PR. And then I reflect on it, and he rightly said it's about risk management. And I think what we're experiencing here today, which is a wonderful thing, is the maturation of sustainability. And I think that these organisations, and we have proof here today, these organisations recognise a huge strategic intangible asset within their businesses. Their first is their brand, and the second is the primary production. And we have heard of mutuality. We have heard Matt talking about collaborative value-adding supply chains, and Inder also referred to CSV. So those concepts are, I hope, real. I think they are because of what they are doing, and they realise that the nurturing of the primary producer and the primary pools of whether it's milk or beef or fish or cocoa trees is now a critical asset within their organisation, and they cannot grow and develop their brands if they don't focus on this and develop.
So while obviously any of these things are a hassle. So while it is a hassle, you know, and it is a lot to learn and it's a lot to take on, and you know, you really have to do it thoroughly and all the way through. There is a short-term return on going for a long-term return.
Absolutely, absolutely. And somebody mentioned today it's pre-competitive.
What does that mean?
Well, what it really means is that when somebody asks you, you know, are you going to get paid for the cost of sustainability? The first thing is cost is the wrong term. It's not about cost, it's an investment. And secondly, the return, and one of the speakers mentioned it this morning, the return here actually is increased sales. Because if these primary production pools of whatever it is are not available and can't grow, well then the sales can't grow. So the payback is a long-term investment in an intangible asset.
Okay, so that's what you're taking from it. Margaret, from the point of view of a seafood company, what's in it for you? What are you taking from what you've heard today?
I think that the central message of the need for sustainability is certainly applicable to any industry, seafood, meat, drinks industry, it's across the board. And all the speakers were excellent today, but in particular, Jason from World Wildlife Fund appealed to me, and also Mars, because they had great synergies with what's going on in Ergal over the last few years. Curiously, we discovered, talking to Jason, that Ergal Seafood was founded in the same year, over 51 years ago, as World Wildlife Fund, and thankfully both are doing very well on the world stage still, so we're happy about that. And also Jason pointed out to me that while Ergal was founded by a priest, it turned out that World Wildlife Fund was founded by a prince, so he did mark that for us. Basically, I think from Jason's speech, the two issues that had resonance with me was waste in particular, something close to my own heart. 1 calorie in every 3 is wasted. Certainly, I know there's a lot of waste on the consumer end, but in the start of the process with processors, waste was a significant issue for Ergal. We were creating mountains of shells because we're a shellfish processor, and we were getting rid of that with completely unsustainable methods, sending material for rendering, sending material for the residues of that for incineration. So we focused on that under our Origin Green plan and reduced significantly the amount of material that needed to go for rendering, and made a valuable resource and new products out of the remaining material, and that's given us new product lines. So I think there's a great win-win for any company that focuses on waste moving forward, financially, sustainability, in every way.
Even though I'm sure initially it was, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with all these shells?
Oh, the shell, I was dreaming about shells at night. It was a nightmare. It was like Molly Malone. You know, you're thinking, how are we to get rid of all these shells and what are we going to do with them? But it also pushes you to be much more innovative. It's incredible how innovative you will become. And I think in particular, if you join a program like Origin Green, you may have great ethos in your company, but when you actually sign up to a program that gives you targets, it makes you go do it, you know, because otherwise there's a tendency to push things on the long finger and not deal with them. So that made it very easy. I think the other issue that Jason raised for me was the issue of reputation. And I think that's a very important issue, especially concerning food, because it's something that people have an emotional engagement with, the consumers have an emotional engagement with. And it's a big issue, I think, particularly since the world financial crisis. That was like a punctuation mark, I think, in world history, and since then there's been a whole new set of principles and behaviors that are now the norm and are expected of companies and corporations. And in that, I think the whole area of being transparent and building trust is very, very, it's crucial to every company. And I think you can do that in our processing by just operating a sustainable organization.
And that whole beyond brand concept, that this is something, you know, that consumers expect, it's something companies are going to have to offer and have available at every level. You can look right through us, you can x-ray us if you want.
You can't build it with a PR campaign, you have to be transparent, it has to be real, and it has to be tangible, yes.
And I mean, in terms of the journey we all have to go, I heard you being asked on radio this morning, you know, why is a drinks company interested in sustainability? And I thought it was interesting because you were pointing out to me later, of course, you know, you come from an industry where in whiskey, you've been recycling, regenerating your products for centuries now.
Yes, the whiskey industry, the whiskey we make today might be used 5, 10, 20 years from now. And the company has more than 200 years of history. And it was actually interesting. We found a while ago an energy recovery unit from 1860 in our distillery down in Milton. So actually, when people ask, is sustainability a fad or a trend? I actually think it's something rediscovered. So I also found it quite reassuring, for example, listening to Dan Bena from PepsiCo, when he went through consumer sentiment on these issues, because our biggest export brand now is Jameson Irish Whiskey. And when we talk to consumers, whether they are in Tokyo, Brooklyn, Sao Paulo, a typical Jameson consumer is 25, 30, 35 years old. And they want to know everything. They want to know the craft and they want to know the sustainability. So it's really reassuring to see that reiterated by so many of the presenters here today.
And John, I mean, one of the things that you know, we all know that the meat industry has been getting certainly a lot of questions asked about its supply chain. From the point of view of your sector, what did you take from today and the message about sustainability? Is it here now? Is it something you need to know more about in the future? What struck you?
Well, excuse me. The first thing that struck me, and I'd just like to compliment, was the quality and the excellent speakers we had. And I think we here as a panel have been tasked with giving a reaction to what we've heard. And I think that's one of the first things we should say was how good they were. And obviously the time that they put into their presentations certainly came across clearly. I was struck by a few things. I liked what Mark had to say from the World Bank about the world poverty situation, about the agricultural opportunities that are there. And when, as you say, you work in a sector like I do in the meat sector, we can see the huge potential there for our sector. And I was impressed with the fact that most of the speakers presented an opportunity more than a doomsday scenario. So the good thing is a lot of the challenges that are undoubtedly real and live are within our control, and we can deliver improved output. As Aidan presented in his speech, we're working to a Food Harvest Plan 2020 to grow not only dairy production but beef production almost by 50%. And to be able to do that and remain sustainable is a big challenge. But the reality is that, for example, like in our sector, in the beef sector, the use of genomics in itself is going to make it easier for producers to deliver these kinds of output increases without harming the environment that we live in, and by maximizing the opportunity through science, which we heard a lot about this morning as well. So we need to work smarter with science, apply it at farm level, because 70% of the carbon footprint that's engaged, if you like, in converting a kilo of meat to a meal on the table is consumed within the farm gate. So within our sector, in the processing sector or in the retail sector, there's little we can do, but we're working hard on it. And I was appreciative of the fact that Tesco, for example, Matt mentioned how his company would like to work more closely with the supply chains to try and shorten them and eradicate, let's say, opportunity that might be there for waste.
Well, there's a question that came in on that, John, actually, that's appropriate here.